A military level meet to discuss disengagement in Ladakh. While talks continue, China mobilizes all along the line of actual control. What's more now, China seems to have roped in its all-weather ally Pakistan to open another front against India. Pakistani army too has moved troops into Gilgit and Baltistan and seems to be preparing the grounds for terror attacks in India, because a very notorious terror organization called Badr, you may have heard of in years gone by, is now being reactivated according to intelligence sources. Gaurav Sawant in New Delhi and Abhishek Bhalla in Leh with our lead story tonight.
57 days of non-stop confrontation in eastern Ladakh. And while generals on both sides spent 12 hours discussing disengagement on Tuesday, it's precisely the opposite that's happening on the ground. In the latest development, China has deployed 2 additional divisions of its mechanized forces along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. The Indian security forces are also keeping a hawk eye on the movement of Chinese troops in the rear positions in Tibet, where an additional 10,000 troops have been holding an exercise for some time now. In response, the Indian Army has shifted 3 divisions, including 30,000 troops and frontline strike weaponry like tanks, infantry combat vehicles and artillery to Ladakh. And in the most serious friction point of Pangong So, the army will soon receive high-performance boats to escalate patrolling in response to the Chinese build-up there.
The big Indian Army mobilization has been an ongoing process as a response to the Chinese aggression in eastern Ladakh. And this is in keeping with the threat perception that China wants to push things to the brink. However, this troop build-up isn't restricted to the line of actual control.
As India had expected, and validating India Today's report last week, the Pakistan army has also mobilized 2 divisions of troops, about 20,000 strong, along the Gilgit-Baltistan area, producing a 2-front scenario to the Indian military.
It's a fact that Pakistan's deployment along the line of control today is more than what it was even after the Balakot airstrikes. This is an indicator that Pakistan is doing this on China's orders, an order that Pakistan can ill afford to ignore. The fact remains, at this point of time, India is facing hostilities on 2 borders. Pakistan on the north and the west, China north and east. A threat that's big on 2 fronts.
In yet another front, Indian intelligence alarms have sounded on Chinese efforts to revive Pakistan's Al-Badr terror group in order to escalate violence in J&K. What India therefore faces is more than a 2-front war, with 2 nuclear neighbors in a hostile axis and with both looking to pour fuel on terror activity. With Kamaljit Sandhu and Manjeet Negi in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
So there is essentially a 3-front threat that India faces. Terror activities in the valley or in the hinterland being resumed and stoked in a substantial way, a Pakistani army mobilization along the Ladakh frontier, and also the Chinese army, which continues to be extensively deployed all across the line of actual control. Is India prepared for a 3-pronged 2 armies and an internal insurgency kind of situation? Joining us for perspective, Lieutenant General B.S. Jaswal. He's been our Northern Army commander. With us is Colonel Ajay Shukla, leading strategic affairs expert, and Sushant Sareen, who is a senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. General Jaswal, now many a time in a military war game, in a simulation exercise, these scenarios have been discussed. But in these reports that are emerging, which suggest that the Pakistani army is moving additional troops into Gilgit and Baltistan, are you sensing a genuine threat of a 2-front confrontation in case things go south with China? Or do you think this is just posturing from the Pakistani army?
First of all, we have to draw a matrix of possibility and probability. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, this is the time because monsoon option, as I call it, it is there, and the terrain friction in the riverine area is more where our strength lies. So now he can pull out troops from there and bring it to the conflict zone, what is there. Is it possible for him to launch any attack? I don't think that will be in his interest, because Pakistan can't even move a division. He doesn't have money for that kind of a thing. Leave aside war. He may go in for certain skirmishes or certain slummy slicing, little endeavor. Now, as far as China is concerned, well, again, China does not want to get into, it can do posturing, it can do everything. But if in case it gets involved in a kinetic option, well, let me tell you, it is going to suffer very heavy casualty. I'm saying this and making it a very considered statement. It's going to suffer because of whatever weapon systems we have. We do not have the combat ratios to go into his territory, but if he comes towards our side. Thirdly, we have wargamed all this time and again, and we have also wargamed this 2.5 front, which is to be called. The biggest thing which has happened in Kashmir today, the population support, population is the center of gravity for any insurgency, has come down. And that's the reason we're getting hard intelligence and we are getting so many kills. Let Al-Badr come, let them come in, we would be able to take on. To sum it up, I would say the possibility is there as of now, but probability is not there because certain other extraneous factors also, international pressure, internal situation of China, internal situation of Pakistan, they will not venture into it. And China always believes in posturing and trying to overawe.
Okay. So, Colonel Ajay Shukla, what's your broad sense of additional troops being mobilized by the Pakistani army? What are you picking up from your sources? And how real is this additional threat? If there were to be a kinetic situation with China, is it almost certain that Pakistan will seek to open a new front? Or do you believe this is just posturing in a bid to try and put India under more pressure?
First of all, Rahul, the Pakistani deployment does not necessarily have to be directed towards invasion of India. It could be a purely defensive deployment, a situation of crisis being created in Kashmir, and the Pakistan army feels that it must get to battle stations to be prepared for any eventuality. That having been said, Pakistan would love the opportunity to work with China, to fight alongside China, to force a two-front war on India and to take revenge for 1971 Bangladesh, which has been its long-standing aspiration. The problem is, if China wants to show India its place, and it requires the assistance of Pakistan to do so, it would have sort of eroded its own image as a great power, as an aspiring great power, because it needs the help of Pakistan even to cut India to size. So I don't think that China would be keen in such a show India its place operation to take assistance from Pakistan to do so. That having been said, I agree with General Jaswal. India and the Indian military, the Army, Navy and Air Force have extensively wargamed the two-front situation. It is my considered assessment that if it comes to war, China will not achieve its aim of showing India its place. It will be a dirty stalemate between India and China, and a stalemate with a great power is a victory for the lesser power. I have no doubt that if it comes to a two-front war, the Indian military will acquit itself with credit. We have the ability to handle a two-front war. We will do so.
Sushant Sareen, can I have your assessment of a 2.5 front war, especially Al-Badr, now intelligence sources saying being revived? What Pakistan's mobilization does is take away any notion anybody may have had of thinning some of the additional troops we have deployed along the line of control and trying to move them to the LAC. All that would then possibly be completely out of the window, even if such an option were ever under consideration. Sushant?
Rahul, frankly, I don't look at it as a 2.5 front. I look at it as a 2 front. The half front is not here nor there. Al-Badr or whatever other terrorist organization parties are going to go at that. I think that is very easily handleable by the security forces within. But I think we should very seriously consider the possibility and the imminent possibility, in the event of hostilities breaking out with China, of the second front also opening up. I don't think the Pakistani mobilization, whatever it is as of now, is only, as Ajay is saying, only from the point of view of the rising tensions along the line of control. In fact, the areas in which the Pakistanis are mobilizing are not the areas where the tension is very high on the line of control. The tension is extremely high, much lower down, on the border with the what is called particularly Azad Jammu and Kashmir and the Punjab. It isn't as much on the Gilgit-Baltistan. And the only reason why mobilization is taking place on the Gilgit-Baltistan side is because of the kind of pressure which the Chinese are already building up on the border with it. And if I was to take what both the general and what Ajay are saying at face, then prestige loss issue and all of that. But I think, the Chinese would be smart to say, okay, fine. If the Pakistanis were to do something on one side and were to make a push on the other side, it works very well for us. It's like knife through butter kind of situation. It's another matter that if the Indians have actually gained this scenario, have prepared for it, then of course it's another matter. But maybe the other two would be justified in thinking that they can catch India in a pincer. I certainly not rule out that possibility. It is rather imminent.
Okay, you're calling it imminent actually, if this were to happen. So we've heard three very well articulated but completely different perspectives. I want to shift attention to what's happening between the Indian and the Chinese army, and I want to go across to Abhishek Bhalla. He covers defense for us. He's in Leh at this time. There was a meeting in Chushul between the Indian Lieutenant General of 14 Corps and the Chinese Corps commander as well. So Abhishek, I read that whole release which was sent out by the army. We broke that story in India Today. It seemed very ambiguous to me. It didn't indicate for certain that there would be a de-escalation, a pullback, what the specifics would be. So we're essentially seeming to hope for a pullback. Even Global Times in China, their lead propaganda vehicle, is suggesting it. But do we know any specifics about what will happen beyond the hope that we are exuding? Abhishek?
Rahul, whatever has been said in that statement, it's not for the first time. We heard a similar kind of a narrative on the 22nd of June when the meeting took place, and it was told to us that a de-escalation will take place in a phased manner. So that has been reiterated again. What one can infer from it is that nothing much has changed on the ground, because these meetings have been happening over the last 1 month or so at different levels of the two armies. Obviously, between the 6th of June and yesterday, there have been 3 meetings at the Corps Commander level, and a lot of deliberations have happened on moving back, but there was no clear method on what has to happen. There were a lot of differences as far as Pangong Tso is concerned, because India didn't want to move back from Finger 4 for obvious reasons, because that's a place that we've always occupied. As far as Galwan is concerned, that's where the Chinese expressed a lot of reservations, so that's where the stalemate continued. And it seems that that deadlock will continue for some time, because there is a troop build-up on both the sides, not just in 3 to 4 friction points, but other sectors of eastern Ladakh at the line of actual control now.
Jai Shukla, what's your reading of these talks? What are you picking up from your sources? Do you see the army is pulling back, or are we at least set for a long haul till about the winters, when the Chinese can see if they want to stay or go back home? But till then, do you actually see some pullback happen? Where do you see this situation go next?
Well, as I've been saying for a month and a half now, the Chinese are showing no inclination whatsoever to pull back. The talks that were held yesterday were completely a failure. The Chinese have not made any inclination to disengage or to de-escalate. The Chinese commander has very clearly said that all the areas that the Chinese troops have ingressed into and occupied since May the 5th are Chinese territory, and the Indians are doing a mistake by entering those areas, and the Indians should go back. So the Chinese have taken a complete hardline stance. They are not in any way disengaging. nor does it seem as rosy a picture as you're painting, Rahul, that we'll just sit there till winter and then the Chinese will start shivering and pack up their baggage and move out. No, they are building defenses, they are building living accommodation, they are building roads to connect up with roads on their side of the line of actual control, and they are set to stay. So the situation is bleak.
General Jaswal, you know, I've been to Pangong. You would have definitely been to Pangong as well. It's very, very difficult, even in September, October, to live there. To want to do this in the peak of winter, you know, it's almost like being in a For viewers, how would this compare with Siachen? Is this as bad as Siachen, worse than Siachen, some of these heights in Galwan, the heights in Pangong?
No. The heights in Pangong, they're not Chengchenmo, they're not that treacherous as Siachen. But let me tell you, I've been there a number of times, you know, and even I'll slightly switch toward DBO side. The wind chill factor out there is so terrible. It is so terrible that the temperatures really come down. It's very, very difficult. And the Chengchenmo heights are treacherous, but they're not that treacherous as Siachen, because Saltoro itself is very, very treacherous over there. But notwithstanding the friction, the terrain friction which is there, it cannot be ignored in the Pangong area. But I just want to take off. If you can give me a minute, if you have a minute, can I speak for a minute?
Go on, go on.
You see, what Ajay Shukla has said is absolutely right. There was a meeting in some forum, I won't name the forum. I think Mr. Sushant Sain, he's a real intellectual, he was also there. In that, I had started off that the Chinese are going in for a long haul. I mean, there were some whispers, no. But I had insisted that no, they've come for a long haul. There's a typical philosophy of Chinese, and read between the lines. He has come at 4-5 places. His main aim, as I see, the center of gravity of all this is the finger area. Galwan happens to be one of the avenues to block the DSDBO road. There are a number of other nalas. He can block at any time.
One second, sir. You've been Northern Army Commander. I don't want to argue with what you're saying. But let's assume from finger 8 to finger 4, he's sitting on the ridges, he's sitting by the lake. What does he gain? If he's sitting on top of Galwan Valley on the ridge, he overlooks the DSDBO road. He can pressurize that road whenever he wants. There is some strategic sense. He can cut off access to Daulat Beg Oldi. By sitting on the other side in 4 more ridges, what does he gain in Pangong?
I'm telling you, let me finish. You see, if the aim is to interdict DSDBO, he can start off right from Shok. As you go to PP17, you have Gograb and Hot Spring, etc., coming down 16 and then to 15 and 14. At any chosen point, that is during war, before war, domination is what? Interdiction. If during war, he can come along any spur from that side and interdict it. There are a number of places, and there are 3 perpendicular nalas with which he can do. But which is the shortest route to Darbuk? Which is the shortest route? This is through the finger. We have a road over there, and at the end of the lake, I think it's just about 14 or 15 kilometers short of Darbuk. And from there, your Changla is on top. You go straight into what they call Leh area.
What's your reading, Sushant Sareen, of this situation? Do you think the Chinese will start pulling back? If you see Global Times, if you see what their foreign office is saying, they're all putting out statement after statement at this time to say that the Chinese will de-escalate, that both the armies agreed. You know, all the text that is being seen seems to suggest that there's de-escalation, except that we haven't seen any de-escalation on the ground.
But that's exactly the point, isn't it? I don't know whether we are being into these talks and I don't know why we take global times so seriously. Because if we were to take global times seriously, then Doklam, the Chinese would have walked over us, they would have, and I don't know what else they would not have done to us. So, and nothing of the sort happened. So I think global times is psychological warfare, and I think very clearly psychological. But I look at what is happening on the ground far more seriously than what Global Times or somebody else, what statements come out. So if indeed there is some kind of progress in these talks, there is talk of some kind of de-escalation, then until we see it on the ground, if not, and if we can go and sit in Siachen for so many years throughout, and we can sit on the heights in Kargil throughout the year, what is there to stop the Chinese from the places they've already pushed into?
They can sit on the hilltops if they want, they can sit on the ridges, but what do they achieve even if they do? That's the critical question. I want to thank General Jaswal, Ajay Shukla and Sushant Sareen for joining us on this part of the broadcast. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.